going on, guys? My name is Jed Dobre and this is a freshly curated moustache. Let's get it. Alright, welcome to the channel. If you're new here, there's lots of video, photo related, just camera content in general. Now today we're going to be talking about shutter speed in video, but before we do, my music suggestion of the day is My Chemical Romance, Welcome to the Black Parade, or The Black Parade, I forget what it's called, but it's a wicked album, old school emo vibes. But nonetheless, today we're talking shutter speed and what settings you should shoot with while you're, shooting video. So you might have heard of the 180-degree shutter rule. This is most commonly spoken about as the way to get the most natural motion blur. Motion blur being this. See how I'm waving and my fingers kind of blend in? It's not just like a sharp, jittery image. That's what motion blur is. So it's the grass as you're running getting blurred and not just being sharp the whole way, so you can focus on that main subject that you're locked onto. The way the 180-degree rule works is if you're shooting at 24 frames a second, you want to double that with your shutter speed. So 24 frames, 1/48th of a second shutter speed. Now lots of cameras can't do 1/48th, so in my case right now on the Sony, I'm shooting 1/50th of a second. That's the closest we can get to double. That's going to give us the most natural motion blur. You might not necessarily want the most natural motion blur, because if you're filming a scene and you've got someone who's just woken up from a coma, they're very disoriented, or they've just been knocked out, a really slow shutter speed might actually suit this very well. And it can be a real daydreamy, disoriented kind of vibe. You're seeing double, all that sort of stuff. That can be really cool for that effect. And on the flip side, having a faster shutter speed, although it lets less light in, so it means you can actually have a faster aperture at the same time in the middle of the day, it's going to give you a more choppy feel. So everything's going to be sharp images stitched together essentially, because that's just what video is. But what this is going to do, it's going to be really good for if you're in a high-paced environment. Let's say you're in a car chase, or there's a fight scene going on, or someone's like a heroin addict, they're scratching, it's all jittery. You don't want that natural cinematic blur. You want to get real grungy with it. So that's a way to achieve that. But I thought the best way to show you what natural motion blur is, or show what these other effects are going to do, is just do that, show you. Now, in my spare time, other than bank robberies, I play the drums. So I figured, why not set a few different shutter speeds? I'm going to be filming at 25 frames a second, but you get the idea. And this is going to show you a whole different range of motion blurs. So let's get started. So that was 1/50. So now let's crank down to, let's go slower, let's go to 1/8 of a second. Right, see that? Really daydreamy kind of effect. You really can't work out what's going on. Even I in the background, not really a fast moving subject, is blurring in a bit. So this is 1/25th of a second. So you can see if this was a fast-paced environment and you've got someone who's kind of, bit of a scatterbrain, running around getting chased by someone, this kind of vibe would suit that really well. Phone's good. Let's crank this all the way to 1/1250th of a second. Alright, it's a little bit dark, but we'll deal with it. Oh yeah, that's getting good. Screwed it. One last one, let's go all the way to 1/8000th. Let's see if I've got enough light for this. No, let's crank this light up. Now we're really pushing the ISO here, but this is just to prove a point. 1/8000th of a second. Now imagine we're probably going to get some rolling shutter on this stick, so if it doesn't look straight, it's probably due to that, because Sony, especially in 4K like I'm shooting right now, Sony's renowned for a bit of rolling shutter, so see it. Alright, let's go back to the original settings. So that's going to give you a pretty good idea of what sort of motion blurs to expect when you're going at certain shutter speeds, and what ones you should be aiming for to give a certain vibe to your scene. Now there's two other things to keep in mind. That is, when you're shooting at slow motion, I like to go at higher shutter speeds, because it actually gives you a sharper image. Whereas if you shoot at a slower shutter speed, you're going to introduce more blur. And normally when you're at higher frames per second, because you want that slow motion, you want to be as crisp as possible, because you're normally focusing on something and it's not just the broader picture. The other thing to think about, if you're in the middle of the day and you want that natural motion blur and you want to shoot at 1.4 or 1.8 or 2.8 or whatever it might be, how do you achieve that? Should be getting darker. Woo! Alright, let's take this off. This is where filters come into play. This is a neutral density filter, or ND filter, and this one in particular, a variable neutral density filter. What variable means is you get varied amounts of neutral density. Go figure, right? This is a Koken Harmony X, something like that. Let's go with that. So this is basically like sunglasses for your camera. I know you've probably heard that 1,000 times, but it's true. So if I turn this, you should see me be revealed on the other side. These are super handy tools. What it does, it stops light coming into the camera, which means you can have your settings how you want and still get the same results just because you've got this little baby on the end of your lens. Now, these aren't just for video. Obviously, you can use them for photos as well. This is what will allow you to get the motion in the waterfall coming down like that blurred velvety water, and then have everything else sharpen in focus. Or at the beach, you can have the waves crashing and they're all blurred out, but everything else is still nice and crisp. But guys, that is pretty much it for shutter speed, motion blur, and all that sort of fun stuff. So if you did like it, you found any value in it, please do consider giving it a big fat thumbs up. It costs you nothing and it means the world to me because it helps me grow this thing, right? Do consider subscribing if this is something you might like to see more of. And if not, well, just subscribe and don't hit the bell and we can both be winners. Alright, leave a comment, blah blah. I'll catch you in the next one. Bye. Things are pretty cool though, eh? I think you can actually make homemade ones out of these out of welder's glass. So if you're on a budget, try that. It does look like a Rob Banks, doesn't it? Bit of a... If only it had the eye holes, I could really be a... Maybe that's a thing I could get into. Probably make more money doing that than what I do right now. Alright, see ya. Damn it! Ah!